What's up, guys? First Take Fantasy back with you guys today. And today we're going to be talking about the wide receiver position. We're just going to do like a general rundown of certain topics addressing the wide receiver position. And kicking things off, Tyler, who's your favorite rookie wide receiver this year?
Yeah, I'm not going to be targeting rookie receivers in 2020 just because I usually don't really target them, just because it's a little bit more of a learning curve for receivers in the NFL. And given the situation that we're in right now, it's kind of hard to adjust to the NFL when you can't really work out with professionals at this moment in time. So not going to be targeting them. If I had to choose one, it's definitely Jalen Reagor in Philadelphia, just because I love what he can bring to this offense, which is a deep threat that could take the top off the defense. And I think that they acquired Deshaun Jackson last season to do that for this offense. Unfortunately, he got hurt early in the season and just never really came back until I think week 17. So they're definitely lacking that deep threat throughout the season and just wide receivers in general, but that's just a different conversation. But yeah, I love what Jalen Reagor can bring this offense. I think he's a perfect fit. And I think that Carson Wentz will give him the most production out of all the receivers, all the rookie receivers in 2020.
Yeah, he's in a great fit. If I had to pick a rookie receiver also, I stand with you on this. I don't like drafting rookie receivers. I think you're really paying for a lot of hype and you're not necessarily going to get the production that you want. So, yeah, I'll probably be staying away from rookie receivers. But if I, gun to my head, I had to pick one, I'd go with Reagor also. I just think he has the best chance to produce, given that he's going to have probably a high volume role. I mean, I really think he can become a Pro Bowl caliber player in the league, but I think it might take him a little while because he was playing at TCU and obviously he was never playing with a good quarterback. He had the least amount of catchable balls in NCAA last year, something ridiculous. His quarterback play has been terrible, and obviously Wentz is a big upgrade. So yeah, I like Reagor. I think he's someone that honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he finished with over 1,000 yards just by the type of volume and role that he's going to get in this offense. He's going to get probably a high volume, deep threat role, which is really valuable. But he's someone that honestly, I'm still worried because that chemistry does not happen overnight. And I don't think OTAs through Zoom is going to help that happen either. So yeah, definitely probably the best receiver to buy, but I'm not really loving rookies this year either. And moving forward from rookies, which tandem of wide receivers would you be willing to draft from the same team? Obviously not Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, because it seems like everybody wants those two together. But outside of that, who would you want to have?
I think the easy pick here would be Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, just because they bring consistent production year in and year out. But I'm going to go a different route and go with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, both being drafted outside of the top 20 at this moment in time. I think that they're both not necessarily reliant on volume in this Seahawks offense that loves to run the play action and throw the deep pass to either Metcalf or Lockett. I think that Metcalf definitely takes a step this season with another year of rapport with Russell Wilson. And Tyler Lockett is just he's been Russ's guy ever since Baldwin retired. So, yeah, I like those two. And, yeah, I'm buying those two outside of the top 20 as a tandem.
Lockett Metcalf, it's a high efficiency situation. So there's going to be games where you're going to be disappointed because they may not see that much volume. But more often than not, there's they could get 4 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown, because that's just the type of offense and the type of players that they are. They can produce on just one single play. And obviously Lockett's a change mover, but if Metcalf takes a step as a receiver, yeah, I could definitely see both of these guys finishing as a wide receiver too. Potentially one of them being a wide receiver one, not sure which one. I think there's upside for both players. But yeah, I like that duo a lot. The duo that I'd go with is Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks, because these guys are really undervalued right now. Will Fuller is wide receiver 35 in half PPR leagues, and Brandon Cooks is wide receiver 39. I think both of those players will outperform the ADP because this is a pass-heavy offense. Will Fuller already had a big role last year when he was healthy, and DeAndre Hopkins obviously leaves one of the biggest gaping holes in a team's target share. So if you spread that out evenly between those two, I mean, there's going to be a lot of targets to go around in Houston, and that's something I really, really like for both players because, yes, they obviously are deep threat players, but they can also run a full route tree, and giving them those targets with the type of efficiency that these players have, I think it's a match made in heaven with Deshaun Watson. And I think both of these guys will finish probably closer to wide receiver 2s than they will to their wide receiver 4 price tag. So I like both of them a lot. Okay, so moving forward from that, which top 10 wide receiver do you think has the most bust potential this year?
I got to go with Mike Evans here just because going from a quarterback like Jameis Winston, who really does not care about the risk of throwing a deep ball, to Tom Brady, who is just, I wouldn't say he's cautious, but he's just smarter with those passes.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he's going to be throwing with the amount of volume that Jameis Winston did in 2019, where I think he finished with over 650 passes. I could be wrong, but I know it was over 600 passes.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a high-volume offense.
Over 5,000 yards. And, yeah, overall, I think they passed the most in the NFL. But anyways, Brady isn't going to be throwing with that volume. I think that Brady in here solidifies Godwin as the wide receiver 1. We talked about that. Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard, and Gronk, I think, are all going to be more involved in this offense, as well as Keyshawn Vaughn out of the backfield. So I think Mike Evans, although he is very talented and he's going to have his big games just because he's so talented as a receiver, I think he's going to be a little bit inconsistent and is not going to be worth the wide receiver 1 price tag that he has to his name.
Yeah, he's someone that's going to scare me from a touchdown standpoint because he does score a lot of touchdowns. He's a big red zone threat. But like you said, they have Howard, they have Brate, they have Gronk. Obviously, Chris Godwin's a really good player. And they have Keyshawn Vaughn, who they upgraded on Peyton Barber with. So, like, all these things combined, even if Jameis still were the quarterback, I think Mike Evans would definitely take a hit this year just because the offense as a whole has been elevated around him. And when that happens, obviously the volume is going to go down and, like, those very valuable targets are going to go down and whatnot. I think he'll still be an efficient player, but he's someone that's being drafted in the top 10, and there's just so many question marks with what might happen with him this year that I agree with you. I think it's just not worth the risk, and he's someone that I think probably has a better chance of busting than he has a better chance of finishing inside the top 5. So definitely scared a little bit with Mike Evans. Another player that scares me is Amari Cooper, just because last year he was already an inconsistent player. He didn't really outperform Gallup that much. He just played more games than Gallup. So with CeeDee Lamb coming into the fold, obviously that becomes much scarier because those high volume, high target games aren't going to be there as much because obviously CeeDee is going to demand his target share as well. And with Amari Cooper being super inconsistent, I think he could go either one of two ways. He could really benefit from having less attention as a receiver, or he could lose more volume and just kind of flame out a little bit and not necessarily be as good as everybody thought he was going to be. So right now, as wide receiver 10, that's just way too much risk for him to have him as my wide receiver 1. Just someone like Mike Evans, it's just the question marks around him really scare me, and I'd rather have players later that I think are more secure in their role in the offense. So, yeah, those two I think have some pretty solid bust potential for the top 10 and kind of scare me a little bit. So now going on players that finished or are looking to finish as wide receiver 1s this year, I just want you to tell me if you think they are overvalued or undervalued at where they're currently being drafted. So DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver 3.
I think he's definitely overvalued. I talked about it in the AFC West podcast. I think that his ADOT definitely goes down in Arizona just because they're a more methodical offense. So I don't think that he
ADOT is average depth of target, just for those of you that you don't know. We like to use that stat a lot.
Yeah. So I think that definitely goes down, more methodical, and he's just not going to have as many deep balls thrown to him this season. And I think his air yards go down. So, yeah. That
offense scares me. I think he's also overvalued. Kenny Golladay, wide receiver 7, overvalued or undervalued? This one's very interesting.
Yeah. I want to say a little bit overvalued. I still think he's a wide receiver 1, but I would put him more in the 8 or 9 range if I had a choice. So I love him in this offense just because Matthew Stafford loves to throw the 50-50 balls. He trusts his guys, Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay. Marvin Jones is still there, so he's going to have his big games. They play Minnesota twice a year, just to let you all know. Marvin Jones is going to have 20-plus points.
The Marvin Jones Minnesota game, the biggest hack in fantasy football.
Yeah. So those are 2 games, and Golladay could kind of disappear. And just like in general, Marvin Jones is a solid receiver, and I don't think Stafford really has a preference between the two. But, yeah, Galladay's still going to have his his volume. He's going to get the deep balls that he needs to maintain a wide receiver 1 status. And I think he does. I just don't think I mean, I'd rather put him in the lower wide receiver 1 rather than 7.
Yeah, he's someone that's very interesting because I think he has a very wide range of outcomes because obviously Marvin Jones is still there. DeAndre Swift is added into the offense. They brought in Quintez Cephas, who I think is going to be a pretty nice slot receiver in the NFL. You also have TJ Hawkinson, who, if he develops as a tight end, that's another threat that can be used all over the field. So I think Galladay, his efficiency really can't go up. It's really, really good, although he's done it multiple years, so we know he's going to be an efficient player. I think he led the league in touchdowns last year with like 11 or 12, and that probably will regress, but there's a chance that it doesn't. So I could, like, if you told me right now Kenny Galladay finishes top 3 next season, I'd honestly believe you. But if you told me he finished outside of the top 15, I'd also believe you because there's just there's a wide range of outcomes. And at wide receiver 7, I like the upside, but I'm also a little bit scared of the floor because if those deep passes stop falling and whatever, then you start having a bit of a problem with Galladay. Although he is a complete receiver, he is a star in this league.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I just don't necessarily know if I love him over like the next guy that I'm going to talk about. I think there's just more secure players to have, although Galladay will most definitely be a very, very good fantasy asset this year. So now moving on to one of the guys that I like, Allen Robinson at wide receiver 9. Do you think he's overvalued or undervalued?
Definitely would not say undervalued. I'd say either stand pat or overvalued just because I think that he finishes right around in that area, the wide receiver 9, wide receiver 8 range. I think that Nick Foles definitely benefits him. It seems like Allen Robinson has been in the NFL for quite a while, but he's only 26. He's coming into year 3 after the ACL injury. He showed no signs of the ACL holding him back last season, and he just demonstrated some very crisp route running. And it's clear that when you watch him, he has one of the best route running skills in the NFL. So I like Allen Robinson at wide receiver 8. I'd be very comfortable with him as my wide receiver 1.
Yeah, so wide receiver 9, I'll say a little undervalued. In my rankings, I'll probably flip-flop him with Galladay. I'll probably have him as like a wide receiver 7 this year, maybe like right behind or honestly equal to Chris Godwin. I think the volume's going to be great, playing with the best quarterback he's ever played with. Keep in mind, Allen Robinson's done all this playing with Blake Bortles, Blaine Gabbert, and last year Mitch Trubisky. I mean, it's nothing short of incredible what he's done throughout his career, especially considering he's also battled through an ACL injury. I mean, this is one of the top receivers in the NFL, and he doesn't get enough credit for it. So, yeah, Allen Robinson, I think he's slightly undervalued at wide receiver 9, and I'd be super happy with him as my wide receiver 1. And now we got two young guys. So we have A.J. Brown, wide receiver 16. Overvalued, undervalued?
I think he's overvalued here just because, the offense for the Titans was performing at an efficiency level that we haven't seen much in the NFL. So
never. It was the highest efficiency like ever through 14 games. Like purely absurd.
I think you mean 10 games.
10 games. 10 games. Yeah, 10 games.
That 10 14. So yeah, I don't think Mariota contributed to that efficiency.
No, he definitely held them back. But yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely overvalued. Someone that wide receiver 16, it's like the upside is definitely there if they do throw to him a lot. But assuming he's only going to have like a 22% target share of a low volume passing offense, I just don't love that this year, especially if Corey Davis takes off.
Yeah, don't sleep on Corey Davis.
Contract year.
I think we both see him as the more talented player. It's just that A.J. Brown gets the more looks. We do like A.J. Brown as a player, but the situation, it's like the Seattle Seahawks situation, just loves to attack the play action, except Ryan Tannehill, as improved as he looked last season, he isn't Russell Wilson. So
yeah, one thing I want to note with A.J. Brown, like you said, I mean, I don't think at this juncture in his career, given how much he's underwhelmed, Corey Davis is the more talented player than A.J. Brown because A.J. Brown did something incredible last year. But I think he definitely it's much closer than people think. I think the benefit that Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown had is that going into training camp and going into preseason, whatever, they were working together. They were both on the second team to start. So seeing that kind of like growth in the offseason, I think that really helped A.J. Brown have chemistry with Ryan Tannehill earlier on in the year. But I think once we see Corey Davis and Ryan Tannehill get a full offseason in, if they even have one, or like once their chemistry starts to grow, I think A.J. Brown won't necessarily be the superstar that people are making him out to be. He'll still be a really good player. But I think it can kind of balance out a little bit if Corey Davis is even in Tennessee come time season starts. So, yeah, I think he's overvalued a bit. And really quick, the last guy, Courtland Sutton, wide receiver 17, overvalued, undervalued.
I think he's a little bit undervalued just because I think he hovers around that mid wide receiver 2 range. We saw last season that he can command a wide receiver 1 target share in this offense. I think that Drew Lock with another year 2 jump, we're both pretty high on Drew Lock this season. And, they have other weapons. They brought in other weapons in
Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Albert, Melvin Gordon. I mean, this offense is serious.
Yeah, they're definitely looking. They're not backing down from anybody that's in their division. Kansas City team. So I like Courtland Sutton as a mid wide receiver 2. Wide receiver 17 is a bit low for me. I would be fine with him as my wide receiver 2.
Yeah, he's a perfect wide receiver 2 this year. He's a big-bodied guy. He's definitely going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. And having Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler and an upgraded Noah Fant, hopefully, it really helps ease the load on him. So maybe he'll see a little bit less targets. But if Drew Lock takes a step, like you said, then we could see Courtland Sutton continue to put up close to wide receiver 1 numbers. He was doing that for a while last year and then kind of fell off a little bit. But, yeah, he's someone that I don't know if I'll say he's overvalued or undervalued. I think wide receiver 17 is pretty solid for him, but he's going to be a solid wide receiver 2 this year. So I like him a lot. So moving forward from that, I'm going to give you 5 names here. Which one do you think coming off of a disappointing 2019 is going to have the best 2020? Just give me one name and give me why. Juju, Odell, Thielen, T.Y. Hilton, or A.J. Green? Who's the one player from that list you want next season?
I'm going to go with Juju here just because he's in a contract year. He's, 23, 24?
Yeah, he's young.
He's working for his bag right now. And I think that Ben
Did you really just say that?
Well, it's facts. Am I capping?
Oh, my God. Your lingo is going to kill me. Anyways, Juju.
But am I cap?
Why?
All right, I don't believe I'm cap. Thinking that Juju's working for his bag this year. And Big Ben coming off this elbow surgery, I think that Juju's definitely going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense.
For sure.
We saw in 2018, I think he rivaled Antonio Brown with as many targets as he got. So I think that he's going to get the targets that he needs to finish as a mid to high wide receiver 2, possibly a wide receiver 1 if things go his way. So, yeah, I think out of that group, I think that he has, I would say, the lowest floor out of all of them. And
I don't even think it's a low floor, honestly. I think, barring injury for Juju and Big Ben, because obviously both of them have to be healthy, I think Juju could really have a great year. I mean, you kind of sold me on it. He's going to see all the volume in this offense, and he's definitely the best player that they have on this offense. I mean, I think Chase Claypool kind of helps take the load off and get safeties off of him because Juju is getting he's getting a lot of attention. So just having someone that can burn you down the left side of the field is definitely really good. And Juju playing the slot, I think Big Ben playing quarterback, it's like he's going to see a lot of targets. Will he be the most efficient player? No. But it's a big possibility that Juju improves as a receiver. So I think you're really looking at the same situation that Juju was in last year. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think he's just being discounted this year, and he has the same upside. And the floor, we saw the floor last year. I think that floor was honestly just too much or too low because obviously Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges were playing quarterback along with Juju dealing with injury. It was a whirlwind of things that just went in the wrong direction for Juju. But I think, honestly, he could look a lot better this year. I like Juju the most out of this group also. I think he's going to be pretty solid. And so talking about how deep this wide receiver class is for fantasy and how we could literally see 28 of these guys being wide receiver 1s, who's the one, the absolute worst player that you would be fine with as your wide receiver 1?
I'm looking at the list, and you have McLaurin at 28, A.J. Green at 27. T.Y. Hilton and A.J. Green are 2 guys that I look at just because they're very injury prone. they're not very injury prone. They've just had injuries the last couple of years. I'm going to go with T.Y. Hilton here just because I see a little bit less risk in him in the injury category. I love the possibilities or the upside that he has here with Phillip Rivers at quarterback. I think that he does target him a lot out of the slot just because he is easily the most experienced receiver in this offense.
Yeah.
And they're going to have Michael Pittman at the X spot and Paris Campbell on the other side. So I think that T.Y. Hilton is going to be the guy in this offense that we've seen before that Phillip Rivers does like to target the slot. We saw that with Keenan Allen the past few years. So, yeah, I'm buying T.Y. Hilton at, I think, wide receiver 26.
Yeah.
I think that's about where I get to, like, okay, this is about
everything, you get 3 running backs in the first 3 rounds. You're telling me T.Y. Hilton as your wide receiver 1 in round 4 is totally fine with you?
Well, I think he'd be going more like round 6, but I do like the upside that he has.
Okay, so yeah. I think I'll honestly go a little bit lower than that. I think Terry McLaurin at wide receiver 28, he's someone that I really like this year. He's one of my must-haves. I'm going to spoil that a little bit. But I really like him a lot this year. I think he's going to get that target share. He saw 26% of the targets when Haskins was quarterback, and they didn't bring in any elite level competition to really take targets away from him. I think that target share is going to stand. And I really like McLaurin this year. I think we could definitely see him and Haskins improve together. And the change of scheme in this offense is definitely going to help him. So playing with Scott Turner, he's definitely going to throw the ball more and kind of I think he's going to be used the same way DJ Moore was used last year. And that itself excites me because if Terry McLaurin sees 130 targets with the type of player that he is and the speed that he brings, it's really – he could finish as wide receiver 1, and that upside is nice. So he's someone that whether it's 3 or 4 rounds in or 4 or 5 rounds in, if I take 3 running backs to start and then maybe I grab a Mark Andrews or a Zach Ertz or a George Kittle or whatever. And
you're not grabbing a Zach Ertz. Let's just be real.
Okay, I'm not grabbing Zach Ertz. I'll grab Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
If I grab 3 running backs, Mark Andrews, and then Terry McLaurin, I think I could literally have 3 RB1s, a tight end 1, and then Terry McLaurin. And I personally would love to have McLaurin as a wide receiver 2, or maybe even a wide receiver 3, depending on how the draft board goes. But if worst comes to worst, if he's my wide receiver 1, I'm happy with it. I'm totally fine with that. He's that kind of player for me. I think he only has room to grow. He won't get worse. So I really like him a lot this year. And who are some of your late round sleepers this year?
I'm looking at the list, and at wide receiver 44, you have Jamison Crowder, who doesn't really have a rival for the targets that he's going to get this season. They added Rashad Perriman to kind of fill in for that Robbie Anderson role.
Yeah.
And I think that we can both agree that Robbie Anderson's better than Rashad Perriman.
I will agree.
And they added Denzel Mims, who we've talked about rookies before, but more of a learning curve. And I think that we both agree that he's probably more of a project rather than someone who's going to make a year 1 impact. They have Chris Herndon and Ryan Griffin at tight end, who don't really wow me at all.
Nothing of this offense wows me.
Yeah, exactly. Except Le'Veon Bell. But
does he wow you? Clearly he wows the GM enough to sign Frank Gore, 37-year-old Frank Gore, to a $1 million deal.
I think that there's just
I hate the Jets.
Yeah.
I hate everything about the Jets. If there's one thing that I like about the Jets, it's Jamison Crowder.
Yeah, and the volume that he's going to get in this Adam Gase offense with Sam Darnold just being completely okay with a stat line of 22 for 24, 105 yards and a touchdown, and all those passes going to Jamison Crowder. So
that's literally what's going to happen, and it's so sad because it's the worst type of football to watch. But Adam Gase, this lets him sleep at night. He just loves targeting the slot. He did it with Jarvis Landry. He's going to do it again with Jamison Crowder. If Jamison Crowder could finish, he could be the first guy to finish the year with 200 catches and not surpass 1,000 yards. No one's ever had 2,000 catches. But he could literally do that and still finish with not 1,000 yards because, it's he's losing yards on half the catches he gets. This offense is just disgusting. But for PPR purposes, we're talking fantasy here, not just strictly football. For PPR purposes, Jamison Crowder at wide receiver 44 is literally a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I didn't even know he was so severely undervalued. That's actually crazy. He could literally finish as a wide receiver 2.
In PPR.
And what round is that? In PPR, not in standard.
wide receiver. That's like a wide receiver 5. So you got to think like 12th round, 13th round.
That's so wow. Like
Yeah.
that's crazy. Yeah, Jameson Crowder. I'd be fine reaching for him. Like once I get into like the territory of like John Brown,
Oh
I'll
yeah,
probably
give
start
me
taking him there.
over John Brown all day.
Like honestly, give me Jamison Crowder over Debo Samuel this year. Hot take.
Ooh,
Put
ooh,
that one on the board. We'll write that one down. I'll take Jamison Crowder
ooh.
in PPR. In PPR, give me Jamison Crowder over Debo Samuel.
I'm gonna go with you there, just
I'll take
because.
the 1 yard screen route over the 10 yard like
Uh,
jet
yeah,
sweep that
yeah,
Debo Samuel gets. It's
the
just
hell with that.
like volume is king in PPR, and Jameson Crowder is going to get all of it. So definitely give me him. Really quick, one guy that I want to note. I talked about him on Instagram. For those of you guys that don't follow us on Instagram, we do post some pretty good stuff on there. I'm not going to lie. But anyways, Antonio Brown. Like right now, he's being drafted. I don't even know where he's being drafted. Let me. As wide receiver 112 off the board, he's going right ahead of Geronimo Allison, who's like the 5th receiver on the Detroit Lions. So like
You say
Antonio
wide receiver 112?
wide receiver 112.
Okay, go carry
Like
on.
this is literally Josh Gordon 2.0, where like you can get he's literally he's the lottery ticket of wide receivers this year. Like if he happens to play even 4 games, like you completely won this pick and like you dominated your draft for that reason because he's so talented. He's gonna be so valuable, and even like if we just get news that Antonio Brown is coming back, like people are gonna be swarming the waiver wire to get him. So just hold on to him until we know definitively that he's not going to be back, and then from there you can let him go and pick up your Geronimo Allison or whatever. But
Mhm.
Antonio Brown, like wide receiver 112, he could literally finish if he plays say 8 games, he could be a wide receiver 1 for those 8 games, and like that's a no-brainer. Like just get him at the end of your drafts. He's someone that's going to return great value, and if he doesn't return great value, you just let him go because you spent no draft capital on him in the first place. So a name to keep your eyes on going into draft season, Antonio Brown. I think it's just I love him. I love Antonio Brown this year. Like just taking him, seeing what
Oh,
happens. Okay, I don't love Antonio Brown as a person. Let me rephrase that. I do not stand by this man. What he's done is very
there
reprehensible.
you go.
But from a football and fantasy perspective, I love the return on investment that you can get from him this year. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your rephrase. Just because, as a Steelers fan, I
Oh, here we go.
a part of
Steelers
me,
fan again. I don't want AB to go to the Ravens. AB on the Ravens is such a hack. Then the Steelers can't win the division. I get it. Listen, I get it. It's
you know what?
upsetting.
It's
The
fine if we
Ravens
don't
are
win
going to
the
be good. I get it. Okay. AB on the Ravens is a wide receiver too.
I agree with that. And we talked about this before. If AB ends up on the Ravens, which seems like the most likely spot if he were to come back, just with the links up with Lamar Jackson, Marquise Brown, his cousin, they all are from the South Florida area.
And he just
So,
hates the Steelers probably.
anyways, so if he does go to the Ravens, I just want to benefit from it some way, because if he does go to the Ravens, like they're just gonna completely obliterate us, and that's just even with Joe Hayden on the outside. But anyways,
Even with Joe Hayden. He's like
uh,
32, bro. Let it go.
yeah. So we drafted him in our dynasty league. I think the 16th round, and there's no hesitation there, just because, like I said, if there's one way we're going to benefit from this, it's going to be fantasy. So difference from this year is that last year you're sacrificing a RB2 or wide receiver 2, a more solid wide receiver 2 than Antonio Brown to get him. So it's high risk, high reward. Now you're just giving up like Matt Gay instead of Antonio Brown. So yeah,
Yeah, like would you rather have a middle of the pack kicker or a 10% chance at a wide receiver 1? Like it's a no-brainer.
Tiny
It's
Fairbairn or possibly the greatest wide receiver of this era.
seriously, like it's really a no-brainer. He's someone target him at the end of your drafts. He's someone that you want to get.
For
And
4 games.
just to wrap things up, your must-have wide receiver for 2020. Like if you had to draft only one wide receiver going into this season, who's the one guy that you wanted to walk away from every single draft with?
It's definitely got to be DJ Moore just because I love the value of him at wide receiver 13. I think he's definitely the guy that can jump into this elite tier of wide receiver ones coming this time in 2021 season. You know, we've been very adamant in emphasizing the talent that he has from a football standpoint coming out of Maryland. You know, the rack ability that he has in this offense is tremendous, and bringing in an offensive coordinator like Joe Brady, upgrading at the quarterback position with Teddy Bridgewater, I think this could work wonders for DJ Moore. I don't think Robbie Anderson really scares either one of us. I think if anything, it helps him get more space in the middle of the field.
Definitely. That's the same thing I thought with the Anderson signing. Like,
yeah,
a few targets go here and there. I think it hurts Curtis Samuel more than it does DJ Moore.
Yeah, so I think that DJ Moore is definitely the number 2 in this offense, with Christian McCaffrey being the wide receiver 1, RB1 in this offense. But you know, him being the wide receiver 2 is not a bad thing at all. We saw that he could still get the volume last season, and he only finished with 4 touchdowns. So I think that definitely regresses positively for DJ Moore, and yeah, definitely my guy for 2020 at the wide receiver.
If it weren't for the sake of not picking the same person, I definitely would be picking DJ Moore also. I mean, we've been banging the drum for him for a long, long time. We love DJ Moore at First Take Fantasy. And yeah, like, he's just such a good player. And if he regresses positively with those touchdowns, not to mention, he's going to year 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to year 3 or year 4?
Year 3.
So, like, year 3 is typically the time for receivers to break out. Obviously, DJ Moore broke out last year, but, like, there is the chance that he does just get better as a receiver. And I could realistically see him finishing inside the top 5. Like, right now, I'll probably – doing my rankings, I'm low on DeAndre Hopkins, so I might put DJ Moore ahead of DeAndre Hopkins. Like, it's really close. Like,
I'm putting him ahead regardless of value.
He's right, like, neck and neck with Chris Godwin, DeAndre Hopkins, DJ Moore. Like, it's like, I think it's really that big of a season for DJ Moore. I love the Joe Brady offense. Teddy Bridgewater, playing with him is probably going to be one of the more accurate quarterbacks I think DJ Moore will ever play with. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater, he's not anything crazy, but he's going to be an upgrade off the corpse of Cam Newton and whatever Kyle Allen was doing last year. So, yeah, I like DJ Moore a lot. He's someone that I like. But just for the sake of differentiation, I'll say 2 guys. So 2 guys that I really love this year is Terry McLaurin and DJ Chark. So Terry McLaurin, obviously talked about it. He has that high wide receiver 1 target share with the Redskins and whatever. He's someone that you need to leave your draft with. He's a perfect wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. And also DJ Chark, someone that has pretty good wide receiver 1 upside, can pretty much do the same exact things that Kenny Golladay can do. He's going into year 3, and he's being drafted as wide receiver 23 off the board right now, I believe. So if you can get Moore as your wide receiver 1, Chark as your wide receiver 2, and then Terry McLaurin as a wide receiver 3, you're golden from the wide receiver position. That's literally money in the bank, and you can cash your fantasy league right now, because they are high upside players who are being drafted really for their floor, not for what their ceiling is going to be. And that's what you love in fantasy drafts. You want to get those players that are going to return value. So if you can get those 3 guys, I think DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, DJ Chark, must-haves for 2020, 3 players that if you're going to draft a wide receiver, if you're going to reach for a wide receiver, those are the 3 guys to do it for. So, yeah, those are 3 must-have wide receivers for 2020, and this is pretty much everything you need to know for receivers until we do our wide receiver rankings in the near future.